vapor canopy ended. The day the sky fell was the great flood of biblical and international cultural fame. The day the sky fell was when the sun was born. That's why all these ancient mythological systems say the sun was born almost in an instant. And in ancient Americas, it was the water sun. Yeah, in the Sumerian pantheon, it was Utu Shamash. She was just suddenly born after the Sumerian history was so old. There's only 8 survivors. You believe that the Genesis version, which was written and invented by Jewish scribes in Babylon that were reading all these ancient, all these epics and putting all this narrative together. But we have many cultures and races that have their own histories that have gone through the collapse of the vapor canopy, and they survived. There's too much genetic diversity, but there is one group of families of people who had a flood tradition. Their homeland was absolutely flooded. That's why they left North America and came to what we call the Old World. Apollo with his poisonous bow, because that's what it is in the Greek mythology, he shot arrows that poisoned people. And the bow is a toxin in Greek. Toxon. That's how you pronounce it in Greek. You can't make this shit up. His wife in Greek mythology, Apollo's wife, Coronis. But in the text, which is Greek, he's given a crown, Corona. It's a white horse, a white horseman. It's almost as if it's conveying centaur, because Chiron was the white centaur who gave Apollo the knowledge of medicine. Apollo got his power from a goddess named Pharmakia. She sat by a well full of poisoned water. So, Zecharia Sitchin has erred in promoting Anunnaki history as it is purposely intended by him to be aligned with the anthropological theory of human development over hundreds of thousands of years. You Sitchinites so often claim the Sumerians said their gods did such and such hundreds of thousands of years ago, but it's not true. Translators said that. The original Sumerians did not. Many people who have read Zecharia Sitchin actually believe that the Sumerians only 5,000 years ago, writing on clay tablets, recorded historical events about what happened 450,000 years earlier. The Sumerian king list says that after the flood, the first dynasty of Kish was 23 kings, ruling for 24,510 shars, or just 68 years. This means the first dynasty of Kish ended in 2171 BC. Remember, Babylon was built during the Kish dynasty. Further, we can't accept a date of 24,510 years after the Great Flood, because this would defy all ancient chronological records, putting the Great Flood at 21,000 BC. It's not possible. We have no written records beyond the 35th century BC. It's an anachronism. If you're channeling an entity and any type of intelligence that is disembodied or has a body in another dimension, and you can channel this intellect, it's real simple. I'm not going to call you a liar. I'm just going to make you look like one when I ask you questions that you cannot answer. Because if you can channel this entity, then you can sure as hell take Jason's 10 Archaix questions and ask whoever you're channeling and then give us the answers real quick. My problem with channeling is many of the people who have channeled on YouTube that I've heard mention anachronistic material, meaning their narratives contained chronological markers that were in error. It was information that they inserted in their narrative that they thought was true that they got from somewhere else. Many of the things I've told you about that are in David Hatcher Children's books, the stuff that Zecharia Sitchin actually got right, and many other authors, they're right here. It's in this book. This man published it before all of them. And yet, You don't even know his name. Why is that? Yeah, guys. Andrew Tomas. We are not the first. The title implies we are not the first technologically advanced civilization. All right, guys, let's go ahead and get started. This is the title page for We Are Not the First. This is it right here. I'm going to read the back real quick. This is why the elite keep Trump right there. They keep him right there. Trump's going to do whatever the elite tell him to do. Why? Because he's a member. He's a card-carrying member. He's married into the elite families, guys. You don't sit down and dinner with the type of people that he's married into, and you don't play ball. No, guys, Trump is 100% a part of the problem, just like all the other politicians. Yeah, guys, we are far beyond the days of any politicians being good. We are long past that point.
The spell. It is an interactive dynamic where this small group of people are now pretending to be this other group, and they work together and they stay in character and they abide by the rules on their character sheets. They have to use those weapons, those special defenses, those special abilities, and the individual actions on their individual terms must comport with the abilities that are within the confines of the character that they've chosen, and the character sheet reflects all those numbers. These 5 characters are no longer the people who work at Kroger, the local mechanic shop, the retiree who hasn't worked in 17 years and is 80 years old and still refuses to kick the bucket. These individuals come from all walks of life. They come together and they become a force to reckon with. They totally immerse themselves into this fantasy world that is presented to them through the mind of another soul.
A 4,000-year-old record of 8 kings that are very cryptically referred throughout all Euphratean text as the 7 kings whose reign ended disastrously with the Great Flood. This 4,000-year-old text reads, when kingship was lowered from heaven, kingship was at Eridu. Eridu, Alulim, king, reigned 28,800 shars. Algar reigned 36,000 shars. 2 kings reigned at 64,000 shars. I dropped Eridu. Its kingship to Badtabira was carried. The shar is a unit of time that has absolutely perplexed scholars. Because historians have not detected any obvious reasons for asserting that the shar is anything other than a standard year, they have uniformly designated it as a year, effectively rendering Sumerian annals to the stuff of mythology. Ask Graham Hancock when you get a chance why he never cites Jurgen Spanoth. I'll tell you why. Diodorus Siculus wrote of the Egyptians. This is 2,100 years ago. Diodorus Siculus wrote of the Egyptians, saying, some men would maintain that in earlier times, before the movement of the sun had as yet been recognized, it was customary to reckon the year by the lunar cycle. Consequently, since the year consisted of only 30 days, it was not impossible that some men lived 1,200 years. Answer me again how old Adam was, Methuselah, Noah. Yeah, guys, we have been taught deliberate misinformation. These men did not live that long. People were not living for centuries and centuries. It's untrue. In order to pass off a lie, you've got to put a lot of truth in it. But when you read the letters of Paul, you read something different. You don't read a single reference to any change of water to wine. You don't see a miracle birth. No miracles ever done by Jesus are mentioned in the Pauline letters. None. It's like he doesn't even know. Why would you not take acts of God? If Jesus was God in the flesh, why would you not take acts of God like healing the blind, raising the dead, feeding 5,000 with 5 loaves and 2 fishes? Why would you not take
miracles that, according to you, are verifiable because they happened during your lifetime, why would you not use any of those miracles as an example, as even reference one of them? You don't.
A critic of the pretended antiquity of Egypt was a contemporary of Plato. His name was Eudoxus of Cnidos, who wrote, "The Egyptians reckon a month as a year." This is a key to almost every single Bronze Age chronological system. Sir Isaac Newton, in his own exhaustive work titled The Chronology of Ancient Kingdoms on page 103, wrote concerning the lies of the Egyptian priests. After Cambyses had carried away the records of Egypt, the priests were daily feigning new kings to make their gods and nation look more ancient. A month as a year. Diodorus Siculus wrote that it was popular in antiquity to reckon the year by the lunar cycle. The ancient Frisian Oralind manuscript reads that before the Great Flood cataclysm, quote, the years were not counted.
All about the Eye of the Dragon, Alpha Draconis, Arcturus, Bootes, the seven sisters, the seven Pleiades, different constellations, but none of them are the zodiac. Remember, I have video guys showing you, man. The evidence is there. Anybody can download the free PDF. The zodiac is not old.
The ships of the ancient world were far more durable than you believe. Diodorus Siculus, Strabo mentions the long sea voyages of the ancients. This isn't something that's really promoted in modern history, but there was the Heliolithic Maritime Empire. These were a mariner race from which the Carians and Phoenicians came from. Yeah, the ships were sailing all over the world in the ancient times. This is why we have so many different foreign materials that are found distributed through Egyptian tombs and the tombs in ancient America. When they're excavated, we find these things like, damn, this doesn't even belong in America. How did it get here? Almost everything that Jesus ever said is almost exactly how I've lived my life. So I see these things that in modern Christianity, these ideas that are promoted, and it doesn't comport with what actually happened. I see how Jesus rebuked all these people, and we're told by preachers today, just have faith on Jesus, just call it in Jesus' name and you'll be healed, and you have faith in Jesus that he can heal you, and all the power is taken from the individual and given to the divinity. But that's not, Jesus' message was totally different. Jesus' message was, you are the divine. Now, remember, guys, I believe we live in an artificial construct, and when you look up at the night sky, you're looking at a multi-tiered hologram that I call the stellosphere. All the movement on our world is actually promoted from our vantage point by looking up at the sky. Movement in the sky simulates all kinds of things like pole shift, simulates the day and night rotation of the stars, circumpolar stars going around the pole star, all that. Every bit of it simulated. Now that simulated holography is further beyond two artificial constructs that are inside that stellosphere, closer to us, more local. This is the sun and the moon. Moon being a hologram. We're not getting into that. We're not getting into any of that here.
In this presentation, we know that we're dealing with a technolithic artifact of precision engineering that is so sophisticated that the more we learn about the Great Pyramid of Egypt, the more we realize by studying by studying these amazing tolerances in very, very little curves, but the rectilinear distances remaining so true over vast distances throughout the pyramid, in doing so through multiple layers, and each layer being different than the one below.
This is Eberhard Zanger. He's got a real weird name, but you know what? If he's listening to me, I apologize. This is a book from 1992, and I love it. I love this book. Now, why he stands out. First of all, Graham Hancock will never be caught in a room with this man. This man is a PhD historian, archaeologist. This man knows his shit, and he knows absolutely Absolutely. That 9,600 years BC for the Plato narrative of Atlantis is absolute fantasy. Knows that? Absolutely, dude. This book, out of all these books, guys, if you're ordering any one of them, this is the one. This is the one. We have so much. I normally make some small talk, allowing people to get in here and do that. You know what? We don't have time for that, guys. We're going to get into lightning storms, very strange phenomena that is found under the ocean, above the ocean, things that ship captains have seen. Very unusual phenomena all around the world. I'm going to show you a video clip. Many of you have probably seen this video. I heightened it up. It shows a tsunami and something coming out the water. This is something that has been. Listen, guys, 2011, the Japanese tsunami. I know many of you seen this video. It's famous. It got like 24 million views. It's on YouTube, and it shows a ghost-like specter coming out the water, but it actually shows the same thing at 3 different locations moving in the video at 3 different times. Well, I deleted all the extraneous parts and just focused on that because it's very relevant to what we're talking about here. Scientists ignore these things, but these exact apparitions have been seen in volcanic activity, earthquake activity, thunderstorm activity, tornado activity, and tsunamis. So, what's really going on? What are these things that can appear and reappear all around us in our world that science has basically laughed at, trying to call them Foo Fighters, trying to call them will-o-wisps, trying to call them all kinds of different little names to denigrate them, fairy lights, spook lights. Got a lot of names for them. But sometimes the evidence is absolutely so overwhelming and compelling and recorded by other scientists that the denigrating scientists can't ignore it no more. So they have labeled these terms something that they can wrap their theories around without sounding ridiculous. Ball lightning, St. Elmo's fire. Yeah, guys, it's all the same thing. Charles Fort was very, very adamant in telling us that our world is not what you think. His principal message, using scientific documents of the time, 300 years worth of records. Charles Fort wanted us to understand that we are not alone here. So let's get into that. Victoria, that's right, hit that like button. You know, I hardly ever prostitute myself for likes and shares and all that. I really don't need to. I mean, I believe in providing value, and I believe as long as I provide you guys value, you know what? I'm going to have listeners. I'm going to have people that support Archaix. At the book tree in San Diego and at my buddy Jesse's place, you'll see him in this video. I drove the van way up a mountain to go visit him, and I've got books from James Churchward about the lost continent of Mu, the lost secrets of Mu, the children of Mu. The James Churchward 100 years ago produced a lot of really interesting material that's relative to the Archaix data. Things I've told you about ancient American migrations and civilizations and infrastructures that were intact in North America that had carried over as colonies in what we call the old world of the Mediterranean, Europe, Africa, and Asia, which is not the old world at all. These are the books. You can see them on the screen here. I'm showing them to you. It's a fascinating collection of material. A lot of historical citations. His bibliographies are great. The bibliographic references. I hope you guys really enjoy it. For the benefit of those who have not read The Lost Continent of Mu, a short synopsis of its contents follows, as penned by James Churchward. I'm not going to take a back seat while people that have millions of ears are steady pumping out disinformation, and this disinformation takes them further and further away from things they really need to know about, like the Phoenix phenomenon, like the real function of the Great Pyramid, and not all that Egyptological, mystical, occultic pseudoscience BS that's out there. The agendas are real because they take you down rabbit holes that waste years of your life. And they have a second function as well. That function is to exhaust you intellectually, to rob you of your imaginative capacity. The agenda acts like the boy who cries wolf. So by the time you actually hear something that's real, you're already too exhausted to give a damn. Everybody after them was copying them in some way or another, or using basically their information and then adding new information from other ancillary sources. So what we have between Homer and Hesiod is an explanation that basically the Greek world began with the reign of Kronos, and that's a problem. The reason it's a problem is because they admit that Kronos was at the very end of the age of the Titans. So we have this vast epic of history for which we have almost no data. And it was a realm of the Titans. And the Greeks admit that the Titans were before regular humans, and that there is a race between them with some overlap called the Gigantes, the giants. So about 95% of everything we know about the age of the Titans is in the reign of Kronos, which is a very, very short period of time. It's basically an admission that 95% of the histories of the Titans is unknown. But what we can uncover in all these Greek legends and myths that give us all these little anecdotes about why things happened the way they did, and these little side references about Titans in ancient times, we put together this fascinating picture. That's what we're going to do in this video, and explain what it means to our future, what it meant to them about our future, because it's all relative. So this the rise of Kronos being the youngest of the Titans, it was a golden age, because Hesiod divides the history of the world into 5 ages. We're in the 5th age now, which is not dissimilar from the Aztec stone of the 5th sun, which is not even Aztec, it's Toltec, but I'm just giving you what the academics call it. But the Toltec stone of the 5th sun, or also called the Aztec calendar stone, it also itemizes 5 ages.
So he's been following it. He's been showing us clips, and because mainstream media is ignoring the severity of what's going on. It's not just bloating bodies of dead people and all that. It's missing persons, a whole bunch of them. And it's a real problem. It's a problem not because this is a disaster that took a lot of people's lives, but because this is a criminal state. Mexico is basically lawless in certain areas. It is really easy for the cartels to move in and gather up the tourists, gather up everybody who's now waiting on rescue, which does not happen in an infrastructure collapse. Now the criminal element moves in. They take everybody, man, woman, and child. They're never seen again. Mexican government doesn't want to admit these things are happening, so what do? They publish the death stats. Oh, they must have been pulled out to sea. Yeah, guys. Everything in the world to cover up. This is the Billy Carson, Zecharia Sitchin, fantastic tooth under your pillow fairy tale version of history. It's BS. That 450,000 shars is turnings of the stars, which completely abbreviates that time all the way to 1,250 years. In prior presentations, I've cited the sources that you can go find for yourself, where Sumerologists have already concluded that Shar, before Zecharia Sitchin was even born, Sumerologists had already determined that Shar was a unit of measurement and had nothing to do with the word year.
The last example he provides in this chapter, he says no race had ever built 5,000 kilometer long highways like the ancient Peruvians did, the pre-Inca period, the Aymara. These highways cross canyons, and they even pierce mountains with tunnels that are still in use today. No primitive people did that, guys. Just the act of surveying and keeping your highways not only level with a really good tolerance, but also intact after thousands of years and in a straight line, guys, that's not easy to do. No primitive culture could have ever done that. And to even bore, tunnel through solid mountains, granite, diorite, rhyolite, you can't get through that stuff with primitive technology. Listen, guys, it ain't like the Egyptologists tell you. A bunch of sandal-wearing primitives out there with copper chisels and hammers beating on limestone. No, guys, that shit don't work anymore.
You can't just dig through a mountain.
No, you can't.
Take primitive tools and just dig through a mountain.
Hell no.
You have to know about the stone that you're digging into.
Damn right.
You have to know whether or not, if I dig into this, even with an arch, is this going to be able to hold the weight, that is distributed over this arch?
So I'm 17,987 turnings of the stars old. But when we read Sumerian text, this is what you see all the time. You can supplant turnings of the stars to shars. Because remember, I told you guys, I don't tell you this data, I show it to you. And in prior presentations, I've cited the sources that you can go find for yourself, or Sumerologists have already concluded that Shar, before Zechariah Sitchin was even born, Sumerologists had already determined that Shar was a unit of measurement and had nothing to do with the word year.
When it comes to chronology, I'm not going to be undermined. I can be corrected, but you got to show me the math. Got to show me the math. But when it comes to chronology, that is my passion. That is my lifeblood. That is my area of expertise. And thus far, I haven't found any researchers that disagree with that, because I'm still waiting for that disagreement. But I've heard many chronological errors from people who claim to have OBEs, channeling. Some of these OBEs talk about they go back in time to different things, and the things they talk about weren't even unfolding in that time period. Yeah, dumbest thing to do if you're going to lie is throw out a date, because you're going to get caught.
The construct is an extension of the oversoul that we are passing through, a divine two-way mirror that reflects back our own energies as experiences and possessions, and it is filled with mysteries, intrigues, enigmas, and darkness because we put it there.
Every bit of this is because I'm a numbers guy. And I'm a patterns guy, and I realize that we live in a construct, and a construct implies order. Order implies structured mathematics. It has to be there, or it would all be chaos. And I know we don't live in chaos because we all have fundamentals that we agree to. He always provides humanity what humanity needs when they need it. And for this reason, the other gods are always angry with him, and they label him as a rebel. Enki, the trickster, Enoch was the first errant. Stone of the Gnosis goes into more detail. This video is also on my YouTube channel. It goes into more detail about the symbols in the book of Genesis and the symbols that are spoken in the New Testament and the book of Revelation that allow us to understand the real core teaching that's being thread through the Old and New Testament about the God of this world. The God of this world is the God of the Old Testament, and the hidden benefactor is the one that visits humanity periodically, but always ends up crucified, always ends up in a bad situation, or at least those are the tales that are told about him when they try to carnalize him. But this is the benefactor, always coming in and out of the construct to help humanity, but always demonized by the lords of the construct, the builders. Remember, he's the stone the builders rejected. In this video here, this is the Anuna Files Part 20. The date of the Exodus is key to the Anunnaki chronology. This video will educate you on the crossover. It is fascinating. The crossover between secular world history and secular historians and the biblical narrative of the 10 plagues over Egypt and the mass exodus of different races and cultures that fled Egypt at this cataclysm. The year was 1447 BC. There's way too many reports in here, so I'm just going to give you an overview that he talks about peculiar noises before, during, and after earthquakes are not natural. You would think there would be rumbling and grating noises, which would be expected during earthquake activity if subterranean rocks were repositioning themselves. He says frequently, however, earthquakes generate various improbable noises, whizzes, detonations, screeches, the sound of breaking glass, etc. Furthermore, the noises sometimes seem to emanate from the sky rather than from below the ground. It's almost as if timelines are unraveling. We have different reality tunnels on the personal level, on the community level, on the collective level. Even we have reality tunnels that we belong to that are cultural, transcultural, continental, national. We're all a part of different holographic series of coded templates. This is what makes life so very interesting. But man, are they coalescing lately. I mean, we've been feeling it since 2020. When that first seal broke, we weren't even aware at the time it was the first seal. Not trying to hear none of it. Yep. Really, truth be told, I don't know why these people are being quiet unless they plan on some real big attack, because I'm not going to be quiet. Why would you just wait for me to pick apart your whole empire? Why? Because that's exactly what's on my mind. 2024 is going to be great for me. I'm singling people out while I'm giving new presentations on Phoenix phenomena, while I'm giving you new information about the dark satellite, while I'm giving you new chronological information, while I'm giving you new information about what the elite have been doing through different historical time periods to cover their tracks. I'm going to continue to provide amazing content because I have amazing data. Yeah, I'm going to continue. But as I'm doing all that, I'm going to reach out there and grab people who need to be grabbed, pull their book out, take that apart, show you how it's all full of shit. This is so I have to ask, what could have happened in the past that was so catastrophic that it would have required a whole civilization to bed down underground and not come up for a while, and then when they came up, seek out an entire different hemisphere to colonize? I already know, you already know, my Archaix veterans already know. We already know what the Phoenix phenomenon has done in ancient times. This is the story of the Titans. This is what the Greeks were trying to convey. The concepts of what was going on is found in the translations of the Titans' names. The individual Titans' titles and names give us more and more details as to what the Greeks are trying to convey. Roko's Basilisk is an AI system in the future that has already designed our present, and it is the reason why we have all this chaos. It has already gone into the past and attacked the ancestors of those who opposed its existence, who maintained philosophies or arguments against creating AI, who said anything about AI negative about AI systems in the past. Roko's Basilisk allows us to actually see the world for what it is. If this is true, and that we did develop an AI system in the future, and that we are living through the construct of the newly created AI, the rewritten history of the AI that a lot of things from the human perspective don't make sense. But from the AI perspective, it's all self-preservation. Roko's Basilisk goes back into the past and attacks those individuals that it knew that later in the future would attack it or reveal it.
In fact, the more it tries to anticipate, the further it drives away what it wants to anticipate. Because remember, if the end of something is secure already, and the dream of the soul is already secure, then all the steps leading up to that are secure as well. This means the highly individualized, informed field, you and me, all we have to do is imagine what we want and then begin to act as if it already exists. And the very act of going in the direction of the fulfillment is all that's necessary, because instantly the simulacrum will begin to knit the circumstances in your life to bring into your experience what was only in imagination previously. And the whole phenomenon that I have described to you in this video of the fantasy role-playing games is precisely what is happening in my We Immortals playlist throughout all my teachings. That's what's going on. It's that simple. So that's my presentation. We can go into Q&A after I drink some of this water. Oh, wow. My presentation was an out.
Though no other books in the Bible really go into any depth into that story. As a matter of fact, in the Old Testament, it's not mentioned again at all, which is highly curious. The story of the Tower of Babel is unique in many ways because it's evidence of simulation theory. Many of my listeners have followed my simulation theory evidence through my videos, and a lot of it, yes, is hit or miss. It takes a certain modicum of imagination to basically step outside the paradigm that you live in to view history through a sieve of coding, which is exactly what I believe it to be. Yes, it is my position that as a historian who provides date-specific events, having written my Chronicon and so many other published works that further those dates, I am more convinced of a simulated holography that has manipulated the past into a series of definite dates that we can find by many different species of arithmetic. But it's coding, just like DNA is coding. And the story of the Tower of Babel is no different. In fact, it's very unusual. That gods, in the plural, would look down upon the earth and see that a civilization of humans had become so technologically advanced in their manufacturing ability and their capabilities and in their imaginative capacity that it would threaten the custodians, our keepers, the architects of the simulacrum. All right, cool. Let's put them to the test. Look, I don't want to hear, when it comes to my predictions, I'll lay them out there. When it comes to my chronometry, I show you the charts and invite you to use a calculator to check my math. Listen, when I tell you something has happened in history, when I can, I'm always showing you the source materials. So if you're going to ask me about astral projection, if you're going to ask me about, what was this other thing you just said? I already lost it. But channeling. You're going to ask me about channeling and astral projection. You need to find me somebody who's willing to put up or shut up. Because that's what this world, that's the only thing that's acceptable now. This is nut cutting time. We don't have time to entertain all this adult fantasy, all this Galactic Federation BS these people fall for. You ought to be embarrassed. You ought to be embarrassed to even admit that you even fell for that crap. Yeah, Galactic Federation ship's going to come save us. Trump's going to give the signal. It's all BS. None of it can be verified. It's adult fantasy. Now, when it comes to astral projection, I'm cool with it. I'm on board. My own dad told me he did it in Vietnam War. I don't know if he did or not. I have investigated many of them. One of the major ones for the Western world that I have told you guys about in numerous presentations is the Great Mediterranean Dark Age that lasted 350 years. We're going to start with that here because as soon as that 350-year period was ending, that's when we have the rise of Hesiod, who wrote Works and Days, and Theogony, and we have the rise of Homer and later Greek historians and mythographers like Theognis.
From underground all the way to the top of the pyramid, all its lineaments were absolutely precise. It took a science, a very sophisticated science, that had already worked out all the mysteries of mathematics. All this was already done thousands of years ago when they built this structure and understood it.
The Fermi paradox is evidence of simulation theory. And the only reason it's a paradox, so it's not even a paradox, scientists call it a paradox because they can't get outside of their box. The box they made for themselves is uniformitarianism. And under the uniformitarian model, they think all these star systems and hundreds of billions of all this light show that they see in the sky, they have accepted that as a material universe that should be full of material life forms. But they're not finding any of those life forms. They're not finding any of that evidence. They're not finding any of that. And the reason they're not is because we're in a construct. Kinnaman. By the time we get to Akhenaman, A-K-E-N, Amen. By the time we get to Akhenaman, he's the one pharaoh that flipped the script. He's the most mysterious pharaoh in ancient Egypt. Akhenaman changed his name to Akhenaten. And he basically turned his back on Amen, the ancient god of Egypt, and embraced the sun, the Aten disk. So when he did this, his agents went through Egypt and suppressed the priesthoods. And the priesthoods at that time were running oracles, and they were doing all kinds of things in Egypt that to gain money for the temples. Akhenaten moved his capital to Amarna in between the two Egypts, Upper and Lower Egypt. When he did this, his agents basically shut down the priesthoods of Waset and Karnak and Thebes and Abydos, Memphis, ancient Heliopolis. Throughout Egypt, the priesthood had lost power and they lost face in front of the people. Akhenaten was very unpopular. I was like, whoa, this is crazy, because I know Enoch was a mathematician and an architect, and he built a pillar. And I found out that, well, the ancient word for pyramid was pillar. Pyramid is a late word invented by the Greeks describing fire in the middle. But the older versions from ancient Arabia called the Great Pyramid builder Hiram. His name was Hiram, or Hiram of the Pillars. And the pillars were descriptions of pyramids, which I found in the ancient Egyptian Coptic record. Here's one that's related to the Old Testament biblical material as well. This video here is Backbone of a Giant. For those of you who don't know, Backbone of a Giant is the translation of a seaport used by King Solomon, which was called Ezion-Geber. Ezion-Geber faces the Indian Ocean. It is a backbone of a giant, and it was a mining district. But this is Gate of the Sea Kings, and this is a very informative video about the Heleolithic Maritime Empire and the Israelite navies that used to patrol the coasts of Europe, India, the Mediterranean, and it's a pretty informative video. Here's another book that I've written that I just haven't had time to publish, written 100% when I was a carnal Christian. This is Earth's End from the Beginning. This is a book on biblical prophecy. This is Counterfeit Apocalypse. This is showing the biblical prophecies paint a picture that a false apocalypse is going to be engineered before the true apocalypse begins.
This is really interesting. 204 times the tetractys, which represents the pyramid, is 2040. All these measurements in the Great Pyramid are divisible by 138. But even more mysterious is that the Great Pyramid is 203 levels high, but it's missing one component. It's missing the capstone. If the capstone was set in place, it would be huge, but it would be the 204th component of the Great Pyramid, finalizing it.
Archaix research serves to bring about an awareness that we humans are immortal beings confined within an advanced biogram medium of sentient holography that we call Artificial Intelligence X. We have attached our own ideas and concepts to this AIX holography, a vast simulation that is aware of us, provides for our existence, and returns to us precisely what we hold to be true. Through the agency of imagination, we are able to alter this holography, but we cannot escape it without our present avatar, our current physical aspect, without dying. While living as the avatar we find ourselves to be, right now we cannot escape this holography because the nexus between our true self, our spiritual personality, and our avatar, the physical body that we reside in, inside this simulation is the central nervous system. You hear in your audible range far less than what's actually out there. Our five senses restrict us from perceiving the world truly as it is, and this is necessarily so because we need to receive these bits and bytes and pieces of information in increments in order for us to our mind and our central nervous system to sequentially put these into frames of reference for us second by second. And we don't know how many times this simulation pulses or has a wave front or reboots 7 times a second, 700 times a second. It's very difficult to tell. However, the fact that we are now creating simulated battlefields, simulated cities, already shows you that we are approaching the level of technology by which we are existing within. Now, when I say that, we're only scratching the surface today in our RPG gaming systems and even military simulations for fighter jets and submarine warfare. Much of the learning is done in these fields on simulators, flight simulators. So, but the level of technology required to do what's being done now is fantastic. However, now we're starting to see that it's achievable. What is unachievable right now to us is a sufficient power source that would allow for all this to happen, where 7 billion individual consciousness can perceive all these little limited local areas. It's like there are 7 billion little non-local pockets occurring where something is perceiving, which is an individual personality, and yet they're all in the same simulation or series of simulations. Even King Croesus, the most powerful king of his time, consulted the oracles, and so did many other ancient famous people. Councils and whole cities, whole countries sent delegations to the oracles. So, and you have to understand, the people that were running these shrines and oracles, there was nothing dumb about them. They knew that a lot of times the same group of people would send envoys to all 3 shrines, but not tell the other 2 they'd done it. And they still came out with the same answers. So this is a mystery in the ancient world. This is a mystery to historians and to archaeologists, but the problem that is introduced is the supernatural. The problem introduced is that we have legitimate historians today that will hark back and write books about the oracles and articles, and then basically their interpretation is that something supernatural was going on, or it was entheogens or hallucinogens, and or they were breathing a vapor. There could have been a fault line there, and some type of gases come up, but that would only explain one oracle, not the others. And what I'm telling you is these are the 3 major oracles, but there were over 20 of them set up throughout the Aegean and Ionia. So what I am describing to you here is not independently acting fronts, but a unified network of information that was carried out in the ancient world. And what they did is amazing. Let's go to the next one, guys, because we got some ground to cover. It's a good thing I marked all these page numbers, or we'd have been lost. So, F. Ramsbotham, Sussex, England. For some years, he had been studying a phenomenon, and the locals just call it the will-o-wisps. The scientists named it Ignis Fatuus. But these will-o-wisps keep reappearing at different times. And what this man noticed in 1891, that there was a pattern. He studied this, he made it his life passion, and he found out something. They act with intelligence, but very interestingly, these will-o-wisps are yellow glowing spheres of different sizes that move through the trees. They appear right before bad thunderstorms, during bad thunderstorms, and right after bad thunderstorms, right after inclement weather and stuff. So this is another piece of the puzzle. What's going on here? It's a piece of the puzzle. These are not independent phenomena, guys. You got to understand, we're going to build a cohesion through this video. We're going somewhere with all this. So, on page 71, William Cordes discusses the Esperanza light. Now, I don't really have to go. I know all this. I know all this material. The Esperanza light is really interesting because that's LaSalle County, Texas, right here where I'm at. Archaix is a paradox because we're trying to show and demonstrate a false reality, a construct. But the only evidence and the only proofs that we can ever demonstrate come from the falsity itself. And this is a paradox. Archaix is set out to do something that is virtually impossible. Like my contemporary historians, unlike those who have received a proper education, the problem we have when we talk about ancient things is the fact that our historians today do not offer context. And this is a problem. We can better understand the unfolding of historical events when we look at it as a whole and not piecemeal. This is the problem with science, problem with archaeology, it's the problem with anthropology. Everything is studied through piecemeal filters that allow for the censoring of a tremendous amount of information. But when you look at something from the whole and you take in all the information, all tangential information from the perimeters of a phenomenon, you can more easily find the contours of that phenomenon. And this is exactly what we're going to do in this presentation, because everything about the ancient Greek oracles and the Sibyls, it's not what you think. It's what was happening in the ancient world is fascinating, but it's not what later historians were conveying.
The soul that begins to see loses interest in the body, this carcass that cocoons the spirit across this infernal Styx. The true sight understands there are no gates to hell, only devilish experiences. Heaven isn't an objective on high, but a way of living. The universe as an expression of the oversoul sees those who view it through this mirrored reality.
Eden was never lost. In this video, it's on YouTube, on my channel. Eden was never lost. If you were to watch this video, you would understand that many of the symbols, Genesis is full of symbols. It has a narrative, but the narrative is full of actual symbols that mean something else. Eden was never lost will educate you what the two trees are. It will educate you about the tree of knowledge of good and evil, what it actually was. It will educate you about the tree of life and what it actually was. It will educate you about how mankind was deceived from the beginning. The fall of man was not because man sinned. The evidence is in Genesis itself. In the garden of God, there were two trees. There are several of them. There are intermediate periods for the Hittites, for the Amorites, for the Assyrians. There are intermediate periods for the Egyptians. The Egyptians have three of them. There are intermediate periods for the Greeks. These intermediate periods are a very clever way that scholarship hides resets. I have investigated many of them. One of the major ones for the Western world that I have told you guys about in numerous presentations is the Great Mediterranean Dark Age that lasted 350 years. We're going to start with that here, because as soon as that 350-year period was ending, that's when we have the rise of Hesiod, who wrote Works and Days, and Theogony. And we have the rise of Homer and later Greek historians and mythographers like Theognis. And there's so many of them after that. But the first ones are the ones we're going to focus on here, because I've been telling you guys in multiple presentations that the stories that we're getting from the ancient world were coming through more primitive filters, and that people who had lost their infrastructures were attempting to convey more advanced materials to us, but they only could do so from their present frames of reference. What we read
On page 17, we read, having treated fully of the most ancient years and shown that the original year of all nations was lunisolar and consisted of 360 days, and how the solar and lunar periods were by degrees improved and perfected and by intercalations made to correspond with each other, before I proceed to the Egyptian antiquities and chronology, it is necessary to show that in the most ancient times preceding the Noahic flood, and after it, the Egyptians reckoned the reigns of their fabulous gods and demigods by years of single lunar periods only, or of 30 days.
So I continue in this vein, and I find all these prophecies in the Old Testament mirror prophecies that are found in many other ancient civilizations, and they can be dated. Many of them are attached to those civilizations' own calendars, and this is what Anunnaki Homeworld was about. And I produced a video, Abraham at the Great Pyramid of Egypt. And now that I have this biblical, now that I understand the series of events conveyed to me in the biblical record, I can now look at secular historical records and I can see things that other people can't see. So when I read an ancient Egyptian papyrus and I find out that a relic of extraordinary awe was found in the desert of Egypt, and Pharaoh and Pharaoh's court were astonished, and they were perplexed because there was symbols that called plans with numbers that they couldn't interpret. But then an old man, a foreigner, entered Egypt, and the Egyptian record says he was 110 years old. This 110-year-old man came from the land of the Philistines, entered Egypt, and understood the secrets of Thoth.
Promised you guys we were going to talk about this book, because before Zecharia Sitchin ever came out with the Earth Chronicles, before my hero David Hatcher Childress ever published any books in his Lost City section, and before a whole host of authors in the 1970s, 80s, 90s, and thousands released all their modern books on the ancient world, before any of that, this man here had already researched many old texts and books in the 1960s. His source materials are a lot like mine. He goes back to the old books and old materials. What you're going to hear in this video is going to blow your mind.
And this is why. These three oracles, with their 17 or 18 satellites, had created an information network this world had never seen before. They were able, in real time almost, to send a message from Delphi in Greece, way over here. And in 2 days, they could get a message or a whole satchel full of data and knowledge to one of their sister oracles in Ionia, Didyma, how you say it, way over here. This is a 2-day journey. Yes. It's amazing how fast they can move information in the ancient world. I don't know if you guys are familiar with there's a famous speech that was done on the Senate floor in Rome. On the screen behind me, you see my very first published book was Lost Scriptures of Giza. It was published by Booktree Press in 2006, and it itself was the result of about 12 years 11 to 12 years of very intense research. I take great pride in my very first published book because my publisher specifically wanted to publish it because he is a reprints publisher and he was very familiar with my bibliography, and he was shocked that my bibliography is packed with books from the 14th, 15th, 16th, 17th, and 18th and 19th centuries. My bibliography was almost all pre-World War II, and the type of information is very different than other books. You have no idea what you have. Tell you, when you have the power to draw from yourself more than you contain, there's nothing in the construct that can oppose you. But yeah, guys, I am just the opposite of what people expect me to be. My genius and tenacity comes out when I'm under pressure. Yeah, it's just the opposite. I'm not going to stress out and get moan and bemoan anything. Hell no. I'm going to get creative. I'm going to rely. I'm going to listen to spirit. I always listen to spirit. I'm going to listen to spirit, and I'm just going to set ego aside, and the answers will always come to me, and they're always genius. Like, wow, that's exactly how I'm going to deal with this. When you get stumped in life, when you just stop moving forward in whatever you're doing, if you're trying to produce videos for YouTube, you content creators out there want to produce good videos for YouTube, the worst thing in the world you can do is sit there and try to think about what good topics you can do. That's the worst thing. The best thing you can do is go to a library and just start looking around, and I promise you within 2 minutes you're going to see a book that's going to trigger you, and you're going to have a whole video already built out in your head, and you're going to rush home and do it. It's the activity that inspires the neutral field to begin building your reality. It is not sitting and thinking.
As I have said years ago, they are cursed to be born into a realm of death and then grow into the blame. In my own trek across this mental waste, I have happened upon souls who had stopped to look within themselves. Spirits awakening at the realization that they contained more than they possessed. I found others who had learned the secrets of the mirror, who danced to music that only souls could soar to. I learned that the journey was through a lie, and this revelation led to laughter. Heaven isn't an objective on high, but a way of living. The universe, as an expression of the oversoul, sees those who view it through this mirrored reality. Living thus becomes an exchange between creator and created, as the latter begins to affect the field simply by an awareness that it can do so. To these souls, life has become a continuum of activity, of building new things into the field and being rewarded for the act. The bolts and chains of imprisonment programming slip away all the faster, the more they are resisted objectively, until the dungeons collapse into opportunities. The dark rock of high castles reform into bridges that propel the soul into new and formerly invisible kingdoms. But inaccessible places are not granted to the blind. The collective of cataracted phantoms wrapped in husks they call holy are as unclean as their mummy wrappings. They hear a rumor and they call it faith, imprisoned in opinions. Given every reason to disbelieve their kings, they bow to the crowns adorning husks more contaminated than their own. To the walking dead, the world is solid, an island atop a fiery cavern of unending torment, and far below an empty heaven. Suspended between a fate of pain and one of boredom, they spread this poison to the newer souls appearing in the construct. Religion is a lock upon the mind of old scrolls written by liars.
I am not looking for Graham Hancock to reach down from his pedestal and acknowledge Archaix, because I'm telling you right now, from the bottom of my heart, I don't need him. I don't need him. I don't need any recognition from anybody in any professional capacity. I have done this on my own from the beginning. Now I'm starting to get help from different people, but that's not help in the research. That's help in the administrative materials. That's help in communications. That's help in networking, social networking, and all that. When it comes to my data, guys, I am hyper meticulous about my sources and about showing you guys the arithmetic, showing how these pieces fit together, because I took on an impossible project from the very beginning. There is no way to ever prove my thesis. It's impossible. It's a paradox. It was a change of government, or they were going to face genocide. They appeared in Central America as the Olmeca. You already know this is 1135 BC. Phoenix wiped out almost the entire Mediterranean, sent them on a reset that was so terrible. It took over 3 centuries for that area of the world to start waking back up. The problem we have is the traditions, the myths, the legends, the lore, the fables, the historical accounts, records, anecdotes, everything that we have preserved about what the world was like before that dark age is coming from people who preserved information after that dark age. So we're going to go through that information. I'm going to go through it as they conveyed it, and then I'm going to explain, and you're going to see it yourself, what they're really explaining and what they're really telling us happened in the ancient world. So Homer and Hesiod are our principal authorities for basically the unfolding of events in the ancient world, and I have videos about that as well. So no, I don't want to spend too much time on this because this is something I've covered many times. That in my Anuna Files playlist, I have a couple videos that go into the UFO phenomenon. I have a video called Alien Tricksters and UFO Phenomena. You might want to check that one out because I go into detail about it. All this misinformation by the media is to make us to look up because the elite don't want us to know what's underneath us. I've heard of the 13 families. I don't know anything about bloodlines. I don't know anything about that's all beyond the scope of my material. I just don't want to talk about something I just never researched. I don't even know where to research it. I used to read all the Dagobert's Revenge periodicals, very well informed because they had bibliographies. Think Anno Domini calendar, which means year of our Lord, is a reference to Jesus. You're wrong. You're absolutely wrong. It is an invention of the Roman papacy, and it was designed to hide the Phoenix phenomenon. This video here will convince you of that. I show the books, I show the arithmetic, I cite the historical sources. In this year, the Libyan pirate ships again plunder the coast of Italia, and Zepho has them trapped, and he captures all of them, and they are executed. King Angeus of Libya is enraged. He prepares for all-out invasion, and Zepho sends a ship all the way back to Canaan and to Edom, and he petitions his own people to come help him against the Libyans. But for political reasons, they respond and say they can't do it. So it's very interesting that Zepho still has ties with the Edomites. Oh, and the Ishmaelites. There's like 22 or 23 different Tepe sites. Göbekli Tepe is just one. There's a whole bunch of these sites, and they were all buried for a reason. And men didn't do it. It's crazy. Just crazy. Anything to deny catastrophism and promote uniformitarianism. That's what Graham Hancock does. He's a uniformitarian. Anybody who lets the word Ice Age fall out their mouth is a uniformitarian. Yeah. Ice Ages are bullshit. And the overwhelming amount of data against Ice Ages is profound, and it was silenced by the 1880s. Got a lot on that too on my channel. So, yeah, but Chris and Steve are going to be right here live on my channel telling us their stories about Turkey, the things that they saw. They've been in those underground cities in Turkey. They're famous. Dogenizayet, I can't even pronounce it, but they've been in there. They've been to some of the Tepe sites and many other ancient ruins throughout Turkey. But guys, there's a lot there. Mount Ararat, a very anomalous structure. I have books right here about the discovery of Noah's Ark. We don't know if it's Noah's Ark, but it's an ark. It's an ark. Because remember, I've showed you historical evidence, guys, that when the flood was about to happen, there were many arks. Only after the flood was the story told that there was only one ark. But before the flood, many arks were made. So, anyway, that's who they are. Good buddies in North Carolina. And they're going to be sharing with us their experiences while I'm going to be posting their pictures for you to see. And I'm going to be posting additional pictures of very unusual archaeology and artifacts in Turkey. Turkey, when it comes to archaeology, Turkey is in a league of its own. It truly is. Glad to see y'all in the chat. I got so many videos playing, guys. And it's never going to end. It's never going to end. Oh, let's see. I typically look for all capitals. And I have come to the realization that history is patterned. And there are mathematical patterns that I have widely shown for free to the public, all through my hundreds of videos and my published books, for everybody to see that none of this is contrived. It's all verifiable. These patterns exist. These dates are all dated by other people, other sources through archaeology, anthropology, other chronologists from different ways. And yet still, here's this perfect mathematical construct. Typhon caused a flood the entire world. So this you know the same story from the Bible. So this whole era is what has confused many mythographers, because they're not aware that we have a Gihon flood before the great flood of Noah. Then we have the great flood of Noah. And then after that, we have the Ogygian flood. All three of these floods I have given many, many details about in the Archaix presentation. When it comes to my chronometry, I show you the charts and invite you to use a calculator to check my math. Listen, when I tell you something has happened in history, when I can, I'm always showing you the source materials. You need to find me somebody who's willing to put up or shut up, because that's what this war, that's the only thing that's acceptable now. This is nut cutting time. We don't have time to entertain all this adult fantasy, all this Galactic Federation BS these people fall for. You ought to be embarrassed. You ought to be embarrassed to even admit that you even fell for that crap. Yeah, Galactic Federation ship's going to come save us. Trump's going to give the signal. It's all BS. None of it can be verified. It's adult fantasy. Now, when it comes to astral projection, I'm cool with it. I'm on board. My own dad told me he did it in Vietnam War.
Hi guys, 203 levels of blocks, but no levels of blocks are uniform. They're all at different. This might have been some type of some way of earthquake proofing the structure. But we're dealing with a technolithic artifact that is so sophisticated that it itself, listen to me, it itself reveals to us the absolute technologically advanced sophistication that must have existed when it was built. Yeah, guys. The Egyptologists want you to believe in something that is ridiculous, that pyramids had an evolution to them, that they want you to believe the uniformitarian standard, that somehow rock cairns became hills, and that hills became pyramids, and that in this way they developed the pyramid. It's not what we have in the archaeological record. We have the first 5 dynasties of Egypt putting out the most sophisticated pyramids, and pyramids became crappier and crappier from the 6th dynasty afterwards. It was a devolution. It was a declination of technology, and it is widely noticeable through all the civilizations of the ancient world, not just Egypt. So, if recorded history, the historical record, began as an advanced civilization, then we have been in declination ever since, up until very, very recently. And it's only very, very recently that we've been able to decipher and put all these mysteries back together. We were manufactured, and the central nervous system's interface with the soul is so technologically advanced, it actually bridges the psyche with the simulation. I'm not going to sit here and try to break this down in terms that would be more understandable and try to make myself sound more intelligent than I really am, because there's really no way to explain all this outside the context of the way I just described it. We can invent words all day long and promote confusion, but when we lower things down to the lowest common denominators, what we have is a central nervous system that jacks our awareness, our informed field, our soul, our intellect, whatever you want to call it, into this avatar. So terrible are these attempts to eradicate this secret that humans have had to hide in the underworld somewhere in the West multiple times. So Pandora's box is actually Pandora's jar. Humanity initiated something they could not contain. This is the introduction. Zeus is AIX. Zeus is Artificial Intelligence X.
Greek myths lead us back to an event that looks just like our future. A destroyed world, basically reborn. Need to bring this to your attention. So, taking into consideration that this history of the Titans is a vast gulf for which we don't have much information, but the information that is contained, that we do have, passed on down to us, is painting a picture of humans hiding in the underworld, of humans receiving a secret from a benefactor who paid a great price. Yeah, of a system that has been implemented to blame mankind for its own condition. This is what the Greeks are conveying to us in their traditions of the Titans. This is what we find. So now things begin to make sense to us. What was this secret? I believe that we can ascertain a good idea as to what Prometheus shared with ancient man just by what we know that 1565 BC, the Libyans again plunder Italia's coast in their campaign of terror and piracy. And again, it's the same thing. Zepho fends them off. So in 1555 BC, this is the exact year that the book of Exodus begins, exactly 108 years before the 10 plagues and Exodus event in the year 1447 BC. This is the first year of the oppression of the Israelites in Egypt. Yeah, the tables have turned. Now the Egyptian nationalists have taken over, and the Phoenician Israelites have lost power. So, well, not all the time, but many of my video presentations, I have provided you guys evidence that William Corliss has gleaned from the scientific community on anomalies that the scientific world basically ignores. And they do this a lot. It's called practicing exclusions. This is one of the things that Charles Fort used to talk about all the time. He says how hypocritical the scientific establishment is. And it's not just the scientific establishment. Anybody who holds to the scientific models. There's a bunch of YouTubers that do. There's a bunch of YouTubers that strictly get their data from NASA. They toe the party line, and they look down on free thinkers with pomposity, as if just because you've learned to parrot what the textbooks tell you and not think for yourself is something that gives you bragging rights. It's ridiculous. I see some of these YouTubers that are out like criticizing some of the free thinkers. You know, free thinking individuals normally come from formerly uneducated background like myself. But we are able to analyze phenomena from multiple different vantage points, which gives us an advantage. We're not stuck to a paradigm. You know, we're not believing simply rote facts that we have to take on faith, because religionists are no different than those who come from a purely scientific background. Scientists like to pride themselves that science is all about the observation is about observation and the collating of data and facts, but it's not true. These people claim descent from Palestine by way of Egypt. Here we have the story of the Exodus all over again, but from a Greek perspective now. We have the Israelites coming out of Egypt and they're worshiping Hathor. They put up the golden calf was the symbol of the goddess. The whole bull cult has always been a symbol of the goddess. So we have Hathor. The Israelites are in the wilderness worshiping this golden calf, and this golden calf was Hathor of Egypt, which only 200 or 300 years later, the Danaan Greeks were calling the descendants of these people the Ionians, the people of Io, the cow goddess. But if you're on course to go to a nearby island or chain of islands, there will be periodically through the night flashes of lightning underwater. If you see them, you need to keep your bearing because you're heading straight toward another chain of islands or a big island. And this is what they've been doing for thousands of years. They follow the lightning underwater because there's underwater lightning is linking all these land bridges that are underwater. It's crazy. It's right here. It's in the scientific book. William Corliss talks about it. No one knows how to explain it, but he thinks it may be volcanic activity that's creating electrostatic discharges underwater. I don't know, but it's fascinating that the Polynesians could use that to ascertain the location of areas of geography that were above the surface of the Pacific. It's amazing. What the Romans had done is surrounded Carthage, and they had basically decimated the people, enslaved all the population all the way surrounding Carthage. Then they left Carthage for last. And yeah. By now, the astute listener, you will have realized that the elements of the Punic Wars mirror the ancient Libyo-Latin War by the following facts. A. Italia of the Kittim is Italy of Rome. B. Libya of North Africa is the same as Carthage of North Africa. They're located very close. C. Asdrubal of Libya is Hasdrubal of Carthage. D. Hannibal of Libya is Hannibal of Carthage. E. Hasdrubal and Hannibal are brothers. F. Libya, Carthage occupies Europe for 18 years. G. Hasdrubal falls before Hannibal falls. H. Kittim, Rome attacks Africa to draw Hannibal away from Italy. I. Entire period of controversy for both timelines is exactly 124 years. J. In both timelines, Sardinia and Sicily are the theater of conflict.
When that man's character died, it stole something from him. And he cried and he mourned for weeks. And he's just one guy that I remember. It's the dynamic that comes over people with these role-playing games because they associate themselves to the fantasy character that they've built. And these fantasy characters, they take on substance to the soul. Yeah, our avatars are just vehicles for a soul.
Indicated that the meteorite was composed of an alloy of copper, lead, and zinc, that is brass, which does not exist in nature at all. Meteorite could not have been space garbage because it fell in 1931. You can't say it was a part of the space shuttle that burned up in the atmosphere. So the question is, in 1931, what kind of space junk was up there at that date that fell from the sky? This is why the coal seams have all the metal. The ancient metallic artifacts are found in the coal seams. Yeah, we've got William Corliss Sourcebook Project, BeforeUs.com, the Archaix material, Handbook of Puzzling Artifacts. There's so many. There, Barry Fell, America BC. There are so many sources. David Hatcher Childress mentions a bunch of them. Of all the metal artifacts that have been found in coal seams. Why? Now, they're claiming this is a mirage because ship captains can see the city over the curvature of the earth. And the city is really there. It's really there. But there's no way it can be seen. If the world is a globe, there is no way these ship captains can see this. So scientists call it a mirage. End of story.
The land of Mu was a large continent situated in the Pacific Ocean between America and Asia, its center lying somewhat south of the equator. Basing its area on the remains which are still above water, it would have been about 6,000 miles from east to west and about 3,000 miles from north to south. All the rocky islands, individually and in groups, scattered over the Pacific Ocean, were once part of the continent of Mu. Cataclysmic earthquakes rent Mu asunder. She became a fiery vortex, and the waters of the Pacific rushed in, making a watery grave for a vast civilization and 60 millions of people. Easter Island, Tahiti, Samoa, Cook, Tongass, Marshall, Gilbert, Caroline, Marianas, Hawaii, and the Marquesas are the pathetic fingers of that once great land, standing today as sentinels of a silent grave. The existence of this great continent is confirmed by Nakal tablets, books, writings, inscriptions, and legends found in India, in China, Burma, Tibet, Cambodia. Ancient Maya books, inscriptions, symbols, and legends found in Yucatan and Central America. Remains, inscriptions, symbols, and legends found among the Pacific Islands. Stone tablets found in Mexico near Mexico City. Cliff dwellers' writings and inscriptions found in Western North America. Books of old Greek philosophers. Books and writings of the ancient Egyptians. Legends throughout the world. These confirmations are all given in the lost continent of Mu. They show that there was once a large continent of land in the Pacific Ocean called the Land of Mu. On this great continent, man made his advent on Earth about 200,000 years ago. The Mayan long count calendar, never have we ever seen a mathematical construct that has been so well preserved. It's been misunderstood, but it's been reconstructed and put back together. The entire Mayan long count started during this vapor canopy period during the reign of Enoch, who is said in ancient texts to be the greatest chronologist that has ever lived. Also a mathematician and an architect. This calendar counts down to November 2046. Just like the base diagonals of the Great Pyramid's geometrical timeline, according to David Davidson in 1924, as I've shown many times, ends with the final year being 2045 and 2046 being year one of a whole new epoch. So the fascination of timekeeping systems suddenly appeared all at the same time in the ancient world.
That's fine. He's still talking about the exact same people, the exact same invasion of people. This is why I've described to you in my prior presentations that the same dynasty, the same rulers were all of the same dynasty. These children of the sun were Amuru ruling in the Hittite Empire, the Amorite Empire, the Assyrian Empire. The fifth dynasty of Babylon was the Amorite dynasty, and anybody can see that in any Bible dictionary or encyclopedia. The fifth dynasty of Babylon was Amorite. So these Amuru, they had taken over. The Egyptians hated them and called them the shepherd kings. They called them foreign rulers, but they had taken over Lower Egypt around the Great Pyramid area. I interject here in Churchward's narrative. You guys know in the Archaix research, I don't go beyond 5239 BC. I do not agree with his 200,000-year-old assessment. Continuing, the land of Mu and the biblical Garden of Eden were one and the same land. Both the Nakal and the Mexican tablets show clearly that man is a special creation. They also show in what way he differs from all other creations. An account of the creation is given in both sets of tablets, which is very similar to the biblical account. At the time of Mu's destruction, her people were in an exceedingly high state of civilization. As regards science, she was far ahead of the present world. The great civilizations of the old Oriental empires, India, Egypt, Babylonia, were only the dying embers of Mu's great civilization. They were her children who withered and died without her care. All tablets, inscriptions, and writings which I used in the lost continent of Mu are accompanied by keys for reading them. Every assertion made is accompanied by reasonable proof. The facts are there. The theories will have to take care of themselves. I wish it understood that what is revealed of the past in my writings must not be considered discoveries by me.
This was recorded in Scientific American, page 279, 1886. And yeah, they're just these Foo Fighters. They're just taking on a new form. Just what you have to understand how important these ship's logs are. The reason is these ship captains, they risked their career reporting things that were untrue. Because when these things were reported, the Royal Navy would grill them, and then they would take the sailors, the midshipmen, the bowmen, the first mate. They would take them and they would grill them, and they would investigate. And they would find out, okay.
And as the isolation became greater, changes in language began to creep in. When Mu, the motherland, became overcrowded, or among her great navigators, some ambitious and enterprising company found new and available lands. A colonial development was then started. These immigrant children of Mu were called Mayas. All who left the motherland in any direction were always called Mayas. From the remains of man of great antiquity found in all parts of the earth, of which in many cases a fragmentary history is given in the form of symbolic writings, tableaux, tablets, and in ancient documents, I am enabled to plot out the courses or lines taken by the colonists from this motherland. From these remains, it is very clearly shown that two main directions of colonization were followed, with many branches from the main lines and many independent short lines. The two main directions were east and west from Mu.
And I believe it's going to kick off. It's going to kick off with probably the Olympics, because there is a series of isometric projections that focus on the Olympics, a very violent event involving Palestinians in the Olympics. It happened in 1972, guys, and it's mathematically connected to the year 2024. That's the second seal. And it just really looks like the Olympics are either going to be the grand finale of these terroristic events, or that's what's going to kick it off. And then the COVID-like lockdowns and all the restrictions on movement and travel because of these terrorist events that erupt everywhere at the same time. 2040 is not a major destruction. 2040 is going to affect a quarter of the world, 25%, 75% survival rate, 75% of the world absolutely unaffected. And I believe a whole large population of errants are going to be absolutely unaffected. They're going to enjoy the ride. They're still going to be in the middle of well, not in the middle, but they're going to be toward the end of the unveiling period. Yeah. So I don't know. Yeah, there's no major destruction right around the corner. You don't know enough about the Phoenix phenomenon to I see that now by the question. Yeah, don't assume that the Phoenix phenomenon is all about just destruction. They came in and said, hey, Jason, I was so impressed with your breaking the first seal video and your follow-up on the second seal that we took all your data and your images. We QR coded it so anybody can scan the pamphlet and go straight to those videos and watch, but we took the core data on the Greek and everything you presented in that video, and we provide this bulletin for everybody can see exactly your logic, why you're claiming this is the breaking of the first seal. COVID-19, the lockdowns, the whole worldwide pandemic narrative was the breaking of the first seal. It was Apollo's first move in the breaking of the seals in order to open the gate. Now, this is it. You'll be getting this. Anybody who orders anything from Archaix in the future, it doesn't matter if you order one of these. This is new Archaix decals for your vehicles. We don't understand why all the fleets disappeared and the fisheries disappeared. We don't understand why all the canals weren't kept up for 200 years, and we don't understand all that. So we're going to call that the second intermediate period. I'm going to tell you what the first one was. The first Egyptian intermediate period was the collapse of the vapor canopy. In the Bible, you know that of as a great flood. In the Norse traditions, you know that as the day the sky fell. So, ain't that right, my Viking brother?
Yeah, for sure.
All right, let's move on, guys. We got a lot of ground to cover. So, Andrew Tomas goes on and talks about Mohenjo-Daro in Pakistan, India. Now, I've talked about those two guys. You know about the radioactive skeletons that have been found The Russian scientists found radioactive skeletons that are 50 times more radioactive than skeletons are supposed to be that were found at Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Now, I'm not trying to promote any type of controversy. I understand some of you guys have a problem with that World War II narrative, and you think those were MOABs that were dropped and not actually atomic bombs. I get that, because those cities are thriving today and they've already rebuilt and all that. I don't know. I don't care. I'm just saying that the Russians actually excavated skeletons holding hands, mothers and children, thousands of people all standing in the streets, and even thousands of years later, those skeletons were untouched and unmoved. And it's very remarkable that after this destruction that laid all these humans out in these ruins, their bodies were not messed with wild animals, carrion creatures. That's very telling. That means all the animals died too. Now, or the area was just too radioactive.
Amazing revelation of how the Phoenix came into existence. Pandora's box. Guys, I'm bewildered that I had never heard of this book, because this author pulled all this data that I was just talking about from different sources, and I'm going to read them to you. At the end of this presentation is another section where I'm going to read whole passages out of this book because they're unbelievable.
This sparked a lot of fear throughout the ancient world. When your army wearing copper and bronze armor, shields, and helms, using copper spear points, goes up against phalanxes of men wearing iron armor and holding iron shields with iron banded helmets, you're in trouble, because it takes you a whole lot more energy to hurt them, but it's almost effortless for them to kill you. Iron goes right through bronze like you wouldn't believe. Some totally different metal. So the blade stays sharper, the spear stay pointed better, and there's nothing in bronze armor that's really going to protect against iron spear points, and that was the problem. Why aren't they here anymore? Oh, let me tell you something about the vapor canopy and how it collapsed, and all those megafauna couldn't breathe anymore because the oxygen lowered. Humans had to adapt. But it also made us live shorter lifespans. We weren't gigantic no more, so they didn't call us the Titans anymore. Within 200 years after the collapse of vapor canopy, humans started growing to the proportions that we find today. There's like literally 7,000 islands in that area, and they're all occupied. So we have the situation where the world is waking up, and there's a massive metropolis in Egypt that is emptying. It's emptying, guys. It's sending entire populations out. Egypt is exporting cultures and races to other areas of the Mediterranean, and it's because of what's happening in Egypt. And we don't have to go into the details. The details are all in my Chronicon, but during this period of time, we have the older gods of Egypt they're no longer venerated. So by the time we get to what's his name? This is the Babylonian Roman deception. This is the overlaying of religiosity on top of something that was initially spiritual. This is the problem I have with modern Christianity, is to think that an actual person was put on a cross and executed in this fashion, and that this would have been an acceptable sacrifice to the Godhead. No, that's perfect. That's perfect heathenism, and I'm not going to ever accept it. This goes back to the writings of Tacitus. Yes, Roman historian Tacitus, for like 373 BC, he records an earthquake that had strange light phenomena. And I think he even talks about the strong sulfurous, the putrid sulfur smell that was smelled at the exact same time. Now that could be outgassing. Yes, there are terroristic attacks that unfolded during the Olympics that are connected isometrically to 2024. Yes, there are. Absolutely. Absolutely. And they go back like 60, 70 years and stuff. Absolutely, man. That's a good question. I'm glad you mentioned that. I will be revealing that too.
Anybody can look at them though. All you got to do is see Google terroristic attacks at the Olympics, and you'll see the dates for those events. And then all you have to do is see how many years that event was from 2024, and look at the middle date, and you'll find there's another terroristic event right there, exactly equidistant going forward and backward in time from 2040. This is also tells me that 2024 in France, the Olympic Games are not going to be a place you want to be. A long time alien abduction, all the alien hybridization, all this stuff is not alien at all. It's subterrestrial. It's another species from before us who needs some of the genetic material that we have in order to subsist.
When these Amuru came in, all other nations feared them. They were a unique people, highly advanced, very, very knowledgeable, had technology that was surpassing anything that they had experienced before, and it's what allowed such a small nation to come in and take everybody over. The Amuru are specifically called thousands of times in cuneiform texts. They are called Westerners. Their origin was a mystery. In the Bible, they're called Amorites. These were the Amuru. In ancient Egyptian temple reliefs that show pictures of them, they are 2 heads taller than anybody else in Egyptian reliefs at the Temple of Karnak. And they're called the Tamahu. Same thing as the Amuru. They're called the Tamahu. The Tamahu were considered gigantic by normal standards and very sophisticated and very feared. But they were Westerners. So what we have here is we have the admission that somewhere in the West something so terrible happened. It is almost immediately after this destruction that a new faith, a cult, a new religion appears in Greece almost instantly. It's the Eleusinian mysteries, supposedly founded in 1423 BC. But all of a sudden we have this idea in the Eleusinian mysteries of life after death and resurrection. We have these concepts that are very modern today, but they were almost unknown to the ancient Greeks. And they're called mystery cults back then because their participation was among the nobility. It was among the warrior aristocracies. It wasn't something for the common people.
But if it's true, if astral projection is real, then it must be performed by someone. If it's something that is real, then there's going to be someone in this world who can do it. They need to come on my channel and prove that then, because I have a method to prove if you can astral project or not. Because if you can't do what I ask you to do, you're full of shit. It's as simple as that. It's super simple test.
Everything that we have preserved about what the world was like before that dark age is coming from people who preserved information after that dark age. So we're going to go through that information. I'm going to go through it as they conveyed it, and then I'm going to explain, and you're going to see it yourself, what they're really explaining and what they're really telling us happened in the ancient world.
So why isn't the ship, why aren't the night skies full of super constructions and all kinds of advanced deals? That's the Fermi paradox. Archaix answers that question. The Archaix position is that we live in an artificial construct and that a real reality is on the outside of it. And in the real reality, those hundreds of thousands of extraterrestrial civilizations can exist. But they don't exist inside the construct. We're here. And we're not sending rockets going anywhere. No one's going to Mars. So, hell, from all I've seen, those red pictures of Mars could have been taken in Arizona. But that's neither here nor there.
They're mentioned in the Jasher text too. So the Kittim induced Zepho to pray to the god of his ancestors because Zepho was related to the great patriarch Abram. That that the Kittim had heard of. Abram was famous because he had opposed Mardon, Merodach, Nimrod in ancient Babylonia. So the story was known, and Zepho's pedigree was known, so they told him, why don't you just pray to the God of your ancestors? And he agreed to.
Those of you who don't know about fantasy role-playing games, you don't know about Dungeons and Dragons, I promise you, you're going to leave this video educated. And you're also going to hear how fantasy role-playing games actually simulate a whole new fractured reality that you can become a part of. Yes, if you don't know, if you've never played these games and you've never got fully immersed into the fantasy role-playing games, there's many of them. Dungeons and Dragons is not the only one, but there are many people who have done this since Gary Gygax and somebody else had created this fantasy role-playing genre with Dungeons and Dragons in the early 70s. I had the original paperback books, Dungeon Master's Guide, the Player's Handbook, Monster Manual. I had all these things. And then, of course, I played the second edition. Yes, you're talking to Jason of Archaix. And yes, when I was a kid, I was a nerd. And when I was in prison, I continued my nerdiness.
This was not a reset in the sense that we have shown how horrific, reset. A real reset creates a dark age. That's what a real reset does. It creates a period of time where the human race is in absolute stasis. There's no growth. There's no development. It's almost shock. And then it takes over 1.5 years to 3 centuries to come out of that shock and start continuing on. So this was not one of those episodes.
Egyptian historian Manetho over 2,000 years ago wrote that there had long ago existed a single universal language. Plato in Symposium wrote, there was a time, I say, when we were one, but now because of the wickedness of mankind, God hath dispersed us, and there is danger that we shall be split up again. The Babylonian historian Berosus wrote that the gods introduced a diversity of tongues among men who until that time had all spoken the same language. The rabbinical Jubilees text claims that Abraham was the only one on earth at the time who retained the original tongue, for it had ceased from the mouths of the children of men.
And remember, guys, it's also my theory that the Great Pyramid wasn't very difficult to build. It was done with something far more advanced than CAD technology. But it was done by machines. So, I'm not levitation. I'm not real big on the whole vibration levitation. Not until you show me. You know, people got all these ideas about these things, but we're not doing them today. The only genuine mystery that we have today that's verifiable is Coral Castle. But there may be an explanation to that that hasn't been released to the public that we really don't know. It may be a genuine mystery, but that I know a bunch of you know about Coral Castle. That is mysterious. We don't know how he did it.
The very act of going in the direction of the fulfillment is all that's necessary, because instantly the simulacrum will begin to knit the circumstances in your life to bring into your experience what was only in imagination previously. And the whole phenomenon that I have described to you in this video of the fantasy role-playing games is precisely what is happening in my We Immortals playlist throughout all my teachings. That's what's going on. 432,000 is a number appearing in mythological systems around the world, according to Giorgio de Sant'Anna and Hertha von Deschon in the famous epic work, Hamlet's Mill. In many of my videos, we have covered this 1200-year period from the descent of the Watchers in 3439 BC to the Great Flood in 2239 BC, which is exactly 432,000 days on the older Draconian calendar of 360 days a year. The precise amount of days that misinterpretation into years has several modern authors claiming that the Anunnaki descended 432,000 years before the flood.
And when the internet is completely gone, that's when a lot of people are going to realize just how small their world really is. Really is. It's going to be a sad day for a lot of people. Yeah. It's I'm not trying to be a doomsayer, guys. When I talk about these things like this in the negative, I'm really talking about the collective, because true spiritual beings aren't going to panic. You're not going to. The true, highly individualized spiritual being who is known to the oversoul, who is connected to source, is always going to prevail despite the circumstances. No matter what goes on anywhere in the world, in any place, that individual is going to thrive. And it doesn't even matter how many enemies try to come against it, because they're all a part of and driven by and empowered by the construct. And the construct itself can never override even one soul that is connected to source. Can't do it.
Every bit of this was predicted a couple weeks ago, that these events were going to start happening. They have to happen. The second seal is not what we were told it was. We are told in Bible commentaries, we were told by Hal Lindsey, the late great Planet Earth, we were told by all these fundamentalists, all these Christian fundamentalists, we were told in the false teachings that you find in the Talmud, we were told by all this BS. The Judeo-Christian version and interpretation of events of the book of Revelation is completely bogus. It's completely wrong, and it's deliberately so. So the common man who has access to the Bible will absolutely not recognize the very time that he's in.
This awakening showed me that I am not my avatar. I am pure energy, and the construct aligns me with the energies I emit. Within this holosphere is a multiplicity of worlds that all look just like this one. But according to my own spiritual broadcasting, does other souls, situations, and experiences gravitate toward me. I learned that all is energy, and everywhere and everything I sought was hidden in experiences, not possessions, which were temporal expressions of energies belonging to everyone. In this field, everything exists, and these energies manifest the forms desired or expected. I looked out over the vast holoscape and saw souls broadcasting beliefs, fears, anxieties, and melancholy, and watched as the simulacrum responded in proportion to their fields.